The night Victor Hale looked me in the eye and said, "You'll never be good enough for her." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was exactly what I'd expected. He said it with that corporate smile, the kind that made investors trust him while their pockets bled. His daughter, Clara, sat beside me frozen. Her hand twitched under the table, like she wanted to reach for mine but didn't dare. The dining room was silent except for the slow tick of the clock. The chandelier light caught the edge of Victor's cufflinks, gold engraved with the Hale crest. The man believed in symbols, in legacies, in bloodlines. To him, I was just the outsider who'd stolen his daughter's attention. I told him I didn't marry Clara for money. He smirked. "Of course you didn't. You married her for access." That was the moment I learned what it meant to marry into a powerful family. It wasn't about love, it was about ownership. I left that night humiliated but determined. I didn't realize then that his words weren't a warning, they were a prophecy. 2 years into my marriage, Victor offered me a promotion. He called it an opportunity. I called it a test. He placed me in charge of a high-profile investment project, one that could either make or break the company. I spent sleepless nights perfecting presentations, balancing figures, and building trust with clients. But when the deal collapsed, it was my name in the headlines, not his. Somehow, forged documents tied the failure directly to my signature. The board turned on me overnight. Victor stood by the window during the meeting, silent, dignified, playing the disappointed patriarch. Later that night, I found Clara crying. She said her father had told her everything, that I'd been careless, reckless, dishonest. I tried to explain, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. That was when I realized Victor didn't just want to ruin my career. He wanted to destroy my credibility with her. In his world, reputation was a form of currency. And I had just gone bankrupt. Clara started sleeping in the guest room. She said she needed space, but space quickly turned into silence. Every dinner ended in an argument. Every morning began with indifference. I started noticing how often she spoke about her father, how much she still sought his approval. He was her anchor, her god, the man who built her world and taught her how fragile it could be. One night I saw her phone light up, Victor Hale. She stepped outside to answer. When she came back, she looked guilty. The next morning, I discovered the transfer notice. Our joint shares in Hale International had been signed back to her father. That was it. The quiet betrayal that broke something in me for good. I confronted her. She said she'd only done what was right for the family. I asked her which family she meant. She didn't answer. That night, I packed a bag but didn't leave. I wasn't ready to walk away, not yet. I needed to understand how a man could poison love so thoroughly. And someday I promised myself I'd make him choke on his own poison. The scandal hit 3 months later. Someone leaked evidence of embezzlement linked to my name. Offshore accounts, fake invoices, all signed digitally under my credentials. It was so perfectly orchestrated that even I almost believed I'd done it. The media devoured it. Hale executive diverts millions, the headline screamed. Victor released a statement expressing deep sadness and betrayal. Clara stood beside him during the press conference, her eyes red but composed. I watched it all unfold from our apartment, my phone buzzing with messages from colleagues, friends, and reporters. Every door I'd worked years to open slammed shut in a single week. When Clara came home that night, she didn't speak. She just handed me divorce papers. I remember laughing bitterly. "He wins then," I said. She whispered, "He always does." But she was wrong. She didn't see what I saw in that moment, the faint tremor in her hands, the guilt in her eyes. She wasn't untouchable. Neither was he. They'd built an empire on lies. And I was done being the foundation they buried beneath it. I vanished. To the world, I was the disgraced husband who'd fled after his own downfall. In reality, I was rebuilding, quietly, methodically, piece by piece. I moved across the coast under a new company, consulting for startups, investing in small firms. Every connection I made, every handshake I offered, was deliberate. I was studying Victor's empire, its weaknesses, its debts, its cracks. It took a year before I found the opening. One of Hale International's key suppliers was drowning in hidden losses. I bought their debt under a shell company. Then another. Then another. Within months, my name, hidden behind layers of incorporation, was threaded through Victor's entire supply chain. He didn't see it coming. When I looked at the man in the mirror, I barely recognized him. Gone was the naive husband seeking approval. What stared back was colder, sharper, patient. Victor thought he'd broken me. But I was only getting started. Even after everything, Clara haunted me. It wasn't her face I remembered most, it was her silence. That awful, empty quiet when she realized I wasn't coming back. Sometimes, late at night, I'd check her social pages. She looked thinner, older. Her smiles were public, not personal. Victor paraded her like an heirloom, polished but hollow. I told myself I didn't care. That this was about justice, not revenge. But then I'd close my laptop and feel that old ache, the kind only betrayal can carve. The truth was, I missed the version of her that used to believe in me, before he taught her not to. I started keeping a journal, recording every transaction I made that chipped away at Hale International. Numbers became my language, vengeance my fluency. Every dollar I moved, every contract I bought, it was another word in a sentence I was writing for Victor. The final line would be his downfall. And he'd read it with his own trembling hands. I met Lucan Royce at a private equity summit in New York. He was everything Victor despised, brash, unfiltered, and brilliant. He'd lost a merger to Hale International years ago, and the grudge burned bright in his eyes. When I told him I had plans to dismantle Hale from the inside, he didn't laugh. He leaned in. Within weeks, we were partners. I brought strategy, he brought money. Together, we built Cross Royce Ventures, a shadow empire disguised as innovation. We started buying Hale subsidiaries through silent acquisitions, bleeding Victor's network dry. Each purchase was legal. Each loss was irreversible. I made sure every deal echoed his own methods. The same manipulation he'd once taught me in those early boardroom lessons. The same ruthlessness he'd rewarded in others but condemned in me. Lucan asked once why I was so patient. I told him, revenge isn't about speed. It's about precision. He smiled. Then let's make it surgical. And we did. It happened on a Wednesday morning. News broke that one of Hale International's logistics branches had declared bankruptcy after unexpected capital reallocation. Victor's face was on every finance broadcast, calm but tight. He blamed the market. I knew better. I'd pulled that thread myself, 6 months earlier, through a chain of discreet buyouts. I poured a drink that night and watched him on television defending his empire. The irony was intoxicating. He once called me small, unworthy, forgettable. Now, every move I made bent his world closer to collapse. But victory didn't taste sweet, it burned. I thought of Clara again, sitting beside him at those press conferences, still loyal, still protecting the man who'd stolen everything from us both. Part of me wanted to send her a message, to tell her the truth. But another part, the darker part, wanted her to watch it all crumble without understanding how or why. I decided to let silence finish what it started. Victor sent his first message through intermediaries. A polite invitation to discuss mutual business concerns. I ignored it. A week later, a more direct one came, a letter hand-delivered to my office. Aiden, I know what you're doing. End it before it ends you. No threats, no rage. Just certainty. That was what made it dangerous. Lucan said we should pull back. But I'd waited too long to stop now. Hale International was bleeding from too many places at once. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that Victor was 2 steps ahead. I'd learned his mind too well. Every move he made had layers. When my assistant called to say someone had been asking about our shell companies, I knew the war had shifted. He'd found the scent. That night, I opened my safe and stared at the forged documents I'd collected, proof of the crimes that built his empire. They were my insurance, my sword, and my shield. If he wanted a war, he'd have one. It happened in the most unexpected place, a charity gala. Victor approached me with that same perfect composure, the room buzzing with whispers. He extended a hand. I didn't take it. Still chasing scraps? He asked quietly, the smile never touching his eyes. I smirked. Funny. I could ask you the same. He leaned closer. You think you've won a few games, but you still don't understand how this board works. I looked him straight in the eye. You taught me the game, Victor. You just never expected me to play it better. For the first time, his expression cracked. Just a flicker, but enough. When he walked away, I felt something shift. The predator had noticed his prey wasn't running anymore. That night, I knew we were past the point of subtlety. The next strike wouldn't be silent. It would be catastrophic. The next blow wasn't accidental. It was engineered. I handed a dossier to a journalist I trusted. Inside were internal Hale documents, charity fund discrepancies, and forged ledgers linking Victor to offshore laundering. Every signature was his. Every number a confession. The article hit on a Monday morning. By noon, Hale International stock had crashed by 15%. By evening, the Hales were trending for all the wrong reasons. Victor held a press conference, denying everything with that same icy authority. But the evidence was too precise, too complete. His empire wasn't just bleeding anymore, it was hemorrhaging. Lucan toasted to victory that night, but I couldn't. My chest felt hollow. I thought of Clara, her face buried in her hands while the cameras flashed. She hadn't built this corruption, but she'd lived under it. I told myself I was doing her a favor, freeing her from him. But revenge always sounds noble when you're the one writing the story. The truth? I wanted him broken and her to know I was the one who did it. 2 days after the leak, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then I heard her voice. Aiden? Claire. After 2 years of silence. I couldn't speak at first. Then she said, please tell me this wasn't you. Her voice cracked halfway through. I didn't answer. Silence was safer. It left her guessing. She whispered, he's ruined. Everything's falling apart. They're saying prison Aiden. I closed my eyes. The satisfaction I'd imagined for so long wasn't there. Just exhaustion. Did he ever apologize to you? I asked quietly. No. Then he deserves every second of this. She started crying softly. You've become him. Her words landed like a blade. Maybe she was right. But if I had become Victor Hale, then he'd finally created something worthy of his fear. When the call ended, I realized something brutal. Revenge doesn't heal you, it reshapes you. And I wasn't sure who I was anymore. The investigation escalated faster than I expected. Federal auditors raided Hale International's headquarters, seizing records and computers. Investors withdrew overnight. Within days, Victor's allies turned against him. Lucan and I watched the chaos unfold from a distance, our plan working flawlessly. But I couldn't shake the unease. The destruction was too complete, too fast. I hadn't just dismantled a company, I'd vaporized a legacy. One night, Lucan looked at me over a glass of whiskey. You're not enjoying this, he said. I didn't do it for fun. He smirked. Then why? You already had enough money to disappear. Because he told me I'd never be good enough, I said. Lucan studied me, then nodded slowly. And now you've proven it. You're better. But I didn't feel better. I felt hollow. Every victory left me emptier. The world was celebrating my success, but I was standing in the ashes of a life I used to love. And the fire was still burning. It was Clara who came to find me. She showed up at my office unannounced, smaller somehow, her confidence stripped away. You destroyed him, she said. He's losing everything. The house, the board, the company. I looked at her carefully. And what about you? She hesitated. He's still my father, Aiden. That's convenient, I replied coldly. You didn't say that when you signed our shares over to him. Her eyes filled with tears. I didn't know what he was doing. I believed him. You always did. We stood there, years of love and resentment collapsing into silence. Then she whispered, he's sick. The stress. It's killing him. I wanted to feel guilt, but all I felt was the faint, bitter taste of justice. Then maybe, I said quietly, he'll finally understand what it's like to die a little every day. She left without another word. For the first time, I wondered if I'd gone too far. But I was already past redemption. Victor Hale's empire fell in a single week. Stock delisted. Assets frozen. Board dissolved. Every paper in the city carried his name like an obituary headline. The night it happened, I drove past the Hale mansion. The windows were dark. The gates were chained shut. Through the iron bars, I saw him standing in the courtyard, thinner, older, but still defiant. When he saw me, he didn't look surprised. He just nodded as if acknowledging the inevitable. He mouthed one word, satisfied. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. When I got home, I poured a drink and stared out the window. I'd won. Every plan, every sleepless night, every sacrifice, it had all worked. And yet, the silence in that room was suffocating. Winning doesn't feel like triumph when the ghosts applaud. The morning after Victor's empire crumbled, I woke up to silence. No calls, no meetings, no deadlines. Just the echo of my own success. The revenge had been clean, almost surgical. Yet inside I felt diseased. I scrolled through the headlines, every one of them a eulogy to the man I'd hated. Former titan of industry under investigation. Hale family fortune in ruin. My phone buzzed. It was Lucan. You did it, he said. You're finally free. But freedom felt like a cage. I looked at the empty side of the bed where Clara used to sleep. Every ghost of her laughter mocked me. I'd wanted her father to see me win without her, to prove I didn't need his name. But what kind of victory was this, when there was no one left to share it with? The truth was simple and cruel. I hadn't destroyed Victor Hale for justice. I destroyed him because I couldn't forgive myself for needing his approval in the first place. And that kind of need never dies, it only mutates. A week later, a letter arrived. No return address, just my name written in shaky ink. I knew the handwriting immediately. Victor Hale. I opened it slowly. The paper smelled of smoke and medicine. His words were brief, cold, deliberate. You've proven yourself, Aiden. Congratulations. But you mistook my disdain for a challenge. I never said you weren't good enough. I said you'd never believe you were. That's why you needed me, to hate you. Now that I'm gone, who will you fight? I read it twice, my hands trembling. It wasn't an apology. It was a parting blow, a psychological masterstroke. Even in ruin, he found a way to crawl under my skin. That night, I burned the letter in my fireplace, but the words didn't die with it. He'd won in a way I hadn't anticipated. I'd torn his empire apart, but he'd infected my mind. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized he'd always been right about one thing. I didn't know how to stop fighting. Clara came back to the city 3 months later. She looked thinner, quieter. Her eyes carried the weight of grief that didn't know where to land. We met at a small cafe off the river. The silence between us felt colder than the rain. He's gone, she said finally. Heart failure. They said the stress. I closed my eyes. Part of me had been waiting for those words. Another part wanted to run from them. I didn't want him dead, I said softly. You wanted him broken, she replied. There's no difference. Her words hit harder than I expected. She leaned forward. He was cruel, Aiden. But you became the storm that finished him. You proved him right. For a moment, I almost asked her to stay, to start over. But when I saw the way she looked at me, like I was a stranger carved from her father's ashes, I knew it was over. She left before I could find the right words. And just like that, my revenge turned into a requiem. Months later, a journalist requested an interview, an exclusive with the man who toppled the Hales. I agreed. Maybe out of vanity, maybe guilt. In the studio lights, my reflection looked sharper, older. The host asked, "What drove you to do it?" I smiled faintly. Survival. She pressed. But why him? I thought of all the nights I'd spent chasing his approval, the humiliation, the manipulation. Because he made me believe I was worthless unless I proved otherwise. And now, she asked, do you feel vindicated? I hesitated. No, just finished. When the cameras cut, she looked at me differently, not as a man who'd won, but one who'd lost everything to victory. That night, the episode went viral. Comments called me a hero, others called me a monster. Neither felt true. In the reflection of my darkened screen, I didn't see a victor or a villain. Just a man whose war ended too late to save anything worth keeping. One afternoon, I drove to what remained of the Hale estate. The once grand mansion was boarded up, ivy crawling through its broken windows. I parked by the old gate, the same place I once stood as a man desperate for approval. Now I was just a spectator to ruins. Inside, the air smelled of mold and dust. The grand piano in the foyer was cracked. The family portraits lay face down on the marble floor. In Victor's study, I found one photograph untouched, Clara's wedding day. She was laughing, light in her eyes, hope in her smile. And next to it, his old glass decanter was still half full, untouched since the day everything collapsed. I poured a drink, raised the glass, and whispered, "You were right. I won. But you took everything that mattered when you said I wasn't enough." Then I left the glass on his desk, still half full, like a truce no one would ever see. When I walked out, I didn't look back. Because ghosts don't need witnesses. Success can be louder than any scream, until the applause stops. After the Hale downfall, investors chased me. They called me a visionary, the man who rewrote corporate vengeance. My company soared. Awards, interviews, panels. Everywhere my face was plastered beside words like genius and strategist. But every night, when the cameras died, silence returned like gravity. I'd built an empire on ashes, and now I was its only citizen. My penthouse overlooked the city lights. Beautiful, sterile, lifeless. Sometimes I'd pour 2 glasses of whiskey out of habit. One for me, one for no one. That's when I started hearing him again. Victor's voice, calm and cruel. You needed me to hate. What will you do without it? I had no answer. I thought victory would silence his ghost. Instead, it gave him a throne inside my head. It's strange how the man I destroyed became the only one who never left. The irony came wrapped in an envelope. A multinational firm wanted to buy my company, everything I'd built, at triple its valuation. A clean exit. A fresh start. I sat in the boardroom, pen in hand, surrounded by people who once called me reckless. Now they call me sir. Lucan leaned over. You're going to sign, right? You've won, Aiden. time to rest. Rest. The word felt foreign. When I looked at the offer, I realized something horrifying. I didn't want the money. I wanted the chase, the battle, the pain. Without it, I was nothing but air. I signed anyway. The pen glided across the page, and with it, the last piece of the man I used to be. Afterward, I walked out of the building, and for the first time, no one followed. No flashbulbs, no headlines, just wind and my reflection in every passing window. I just sold the world my vengeance. And all I got back was peace I didn't know how to live in. A month later, Clara asked to see me. We met at the river, the same place we'd said goodbye. She looked different, calmer, older, almost free. I heard you sold everything, she said. I did. And now I start over. She smiled faintly. You could have started over years ago before all this. Maybe, I said. But then your father would have won. She looked at me for a long time, then said softly, he still did. Her words sank like stones in water. She was right. Victor didn't need to be alive to win. He designed me to destroy him, knowing I'd never recover from the cost. I tried to apologize, but she stopped me. I don't hate you, Aiden. I just don't recognize you. When she left, I didn't chase her. For the first time, I didn't have the strength. The man who had everything now had no one left to prove it to. And that, I realized, was the truest punishment. One evening, I found an old file buried on my hard drive, a spreadsheet I hadn't seen since the beginning. Project Hale. Every plan, every calculated leak, every bribe, every deception. It was all there, time-stamped and meticulous. I'd been so proud of the precision back then. Now it looked like a confession. As I scrolled through the entries, I saw her name, Clara. Notes on her movements, her accounts, her calls. I tracked her, justified it as part of the plan. But seeing it now felt invasive, monstrous. I printed the file, page after page, until the printer sputtered. Then I took it to the balcony and set it on fire. The papers curled and blackened, the smoke rising into the night like the ghosts I couldn't bury. When it was done, I whispered, it's over. But it wasn't, because the flames didn't erase what I'd become. They just illuminated it. It's been a year. The world remembers my victory, not the wreckage. They call it the Hale Collapse, a cautionary tale taught in business schools. My name still trends sometimes. People say I won. But every morning when I look in the mirror, I see him, Victor Hale, staring back. Same eyes, same hunger, same cold restraint. I became everything I swore I'd never be. Last night, I visited his grave. No flowers, no visitors. Just a marble nameplate weathered by rain. I stood there for hours, waiting for forgiveness that would never come. Before leaving, I said the only truth left. You were wrong about one thing. I was good enough, but it cost me everything. Now I live quietly. No headlines. No battles. Just the echo of the man I used to be. And sometimes, when the city sleeps and the silence settles, I imagine him whispering again. Only this time I whisper back. I hope you're watching. Because even in victory, he still owns the part of me I couldn't kill.